Let's get right underneath the hood and we're going to disconnect our negative battery terminal from the battery. Just going to come right here. Set that aside so it's making no contact with your battery terminal. Okay friends, it's time to get started wiring in our fog lamp assembly kit. Now what we're going to need is this set of wiring right here. It has the green right there, and that's essentially going to connect right into your switch, but we'll get to that in a minute. Also, something that I would recommend is to get one of these wires right here. Essentially what it's going to do is it's going to plug right into the fuse box right along here, and then it's of course going to have a fuse that leads down to the power wire that will connect into this red wire as well. If you don't have this fuse, your kit's going to come with a little splicer that you can try to splice in. Just make sure you splice it into something that's actually meant for the fog lamps, or at least has key power only. You don't want it set so it's on constant power. Now since I'm going to be using this right here, I'm going to go ahead and splice this wire so I have a little bit more of the metal showing there. So I'll just go ahead and take this off. I'm just going to remove some of that sheathing. Give that a little twist. And now we'll just take that, we're going to slide it right inside there. Get it in as far as we can, make sure we're making good contact, and then we're just going to crimp it down. Make sure we get it where it needs to be here. You always want to give them a nice tug, make sure they're 100% secure. Now let's get underneath the dash right here. You can find your Obd port. If you just get right in front of it or closer to you as a passenger, we're going to go ahead and reach up inside here and remove that panel cover. And that's going to tell us where to find our fuses. Let's go ahead and turn that over so we can have a look. Now that we have that cover off, we're going to look for this fuse right here. It's a 7.5 amp and it's an ignition fuse. This is going to be very important because this is only going to work when the key power is on. That's essentially why we're going with this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and get underneath here. I'm going to go ahead and pull out that 7.5 amp fuse, and I'm going to go ahead and plug it right into my piggyback connector right here. So with the key power off, battery disconnected, let's go ahead and remove that 7.5. Turn that over. I always just inspect them. They're kind of hard to see the inside of, but as long as it still worked when you removed it, it should be good to go. Go ahead and take the fuse that you just removed and we're going to slide it right into this piggyback connector here, and then we're going to take this and we're going to put it into the area that we removed our fuse from. Let's go ahead and come from behind this plastic panel though, that way there we have room for our wiring so we can connect in our ground after this. Bring it up and through here. There it is. Now we can take this, I'll find our spot. Just go ahead and slide that right in, listen for a click. Give it a nice tug, make sure it's secure. And now, like I said, we're going to move along to our ground wire. Let's use a plastic trim tool. We're going to carefully get underneath an edge here and just try to pop up this molding. Okay. Get that out of the way. Next, we're going to move back here to this one plastic nut. Go ahead and remove that nut, and then we'll get this plastic right out of the way. There's that. Now that we have that panel off, we're going to find a spot to put this ground wire right here. That's the black one. Now there's going to be several bolts that you can put this on, but I like to try to find one that's kind of hidden and out of the way. There's one right here up against the driver's side kick panel. So I'm just going to go ahead and loosen that up using a 12mm. We'll slide this in and then we'll snug it up. Now that we have that loose, let's go ahead and grab onto that ground wire. We're going to try to slide this in between the ground point and the washer. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and slide it right behind that washer. The washer is going to do its job and press it firmly against the body there. Just hold this in position and we'll snug it up. Make sure that's nice and snug. Give it a little wiggle, make sure that's secure. Let's move along to using a small pocket screwdriver or whatever you might happen to have. We're going to pop this panel right out of the way. We'll set this aside. Now that that cover's out of the way, let's go ahead and pop one of these. You can use either of these, whichever one you prefer. Let's go ahead and get this right out of there. Now let's take this green connector portion. We're going to come right up along the side here. You're going to see it come through here, and I'm going to try to get it right up and in through this hole. Let's see. Bring it up in there. Grab that. Now we can bring this up and through here. There we are. And of course, if you wanted to, you can try to make this all nice and neat. There's plenty of extra wiring here. We can grab our switch. Now you can see how this needs to be connected in. Has the little beveled area there. Just go ahead and line it up. Lock that in. Make sure it's secure. Now you can take this and you can set it however you want. If you'd prefer the light up high or even down low, whichever is a preference for you. Just gonna go ahead and take this, bring it right down and in. Latch it in there. Perfect. Now out inside of the engine compartment, we're going to take a nice long pick that looks like this. Make sure it's nice and sharp, and then just add a little bit of lubricant. What we want to do is find a rubber area that we can go ahead and try to poke through. That's going to make it so we can run our wiring. If you look in this area here, which is located right behind your air filter box on the firewall of the vehicle, you can find some rubber, and that's in between the two heater core lines. Now what we want to do is just take that nice sharp pick, and we're going to try to make a nice hole for the wiring here. Just going to carefully start pushing it in. Slides right through. It's very important that you do it on the driver's side of this and not on the passenger side. The passenger side won't work. Now that I've got a nice hole, let's continue on with our wiring. Next, we can continue on to grabbing the rest of our wiring harness. This is going to be the area that has all the connectors for the fog lamp assemblies and the fuse and everything else. Let's just go ahead and find that one long yellow wire. It's going to be separate from the rest here. So what I want to do with this now is just essentially you can find a metal rod or whatever you might happen to have that's semi-skinny. You could even use maybe a coat hanger of some sort. We're going to go ahead and tape this on here so it can't get damaged as we slide it through. Just try to tape it on there nice and tight. Use as much tape as you feel as though you need. I like to try to at least get down to the black sheathing here. That way there it doesn't necessarily come off of the wire as I'm pushing it through. That seems decent enough. Now let's just add a little bit of lubricant to this. That's going to help slide it through that rubber bushing for us. Now we can just take this and we're going to carefully start sliding it through this rubber bushing here. A rubber plug. Should want to slide in. Carefully try to work it through there. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and get inside the passenger compartment and start taking that apart. Okay, let's see if I can find that. There it is. I'm just going to pull this down and into a position that I can work on a little bit. Let's go ahead and get the tape off of there. Now that we have that end poking through, let's grab onto our red extension wire here. I'm going to go ahead and grab the female end of this. We'll just slide it right together with that wire that we just brought through the firewall. Let's go ahead and slide it in there. That feels good. You want to make sure that you're making perfect contact, so just go ahead and make sure you push it in there as far as it'll go. That's going to be super important. And then something else that I always like to do is just try to wrap this with some electrical tape. You just want to ensure that it can't ground out up against something. That could, of course, cause an issue with your electrical system. Let's grab some electrical tape. All right, that's completely covered. Now we can go ahead and draw some of that slack back up and into the engine compartment there. And then we'll just take the rest of this red right here and bring it across the top and then all the way over to our connection point on the driver's side kick panel. Just gonna take this wire, bring it up and over everything that we can. You definitely want to ensure that it's not wrapping around or touching against anything that might move. This area right here is your steering shaft. Every time you turn your steering wheel, it's going to move. And then, of course, you have your brake pedal. You want to make sure that it's not going to get caught in a pinch point or anything the like. Let's go ahead and bring it up like that. Now, of course, using a wire tie or several wire ties is more likely going to be the best thing for this, but we'll go ahead and do that once we get everything connected and we're sure that it functions properly. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this. Bring it up and around this area. Now we can go ahead and connect this in with the yellow wire here. Get this plastic out of the way. Slide it right in there as far as it'll go. You should feel a click, and then give it a nice tug. Make sure it's secure. And then you always want to just make sure you slide this right over to protect it. There we are. Now this looks pretty good. Obviously this is a little bit of a mess right here, but we're going to go ahead and take care of that, like I said before, once everything's all together and we know that it's working properly. So now we're going to take care of the rest of the wiring here. You essentially want to make sure that it's not going to go across anything that's going to heat up or break it in any way. I'm just going to essentially try to bring it down and across this area. So I'll just get this right out of the way right here. I'm going to slide all of my wiring right through this area. It's going to be a little bit difficult. It's all right. Of course, you can set this up however you want inside your own vehicle. Just essentially make sure everything's away from anything that could damage it. This over here. Okay, make sure we clip that back in there. We've got the wiring coming down along this area. Bring it right down in here. There we are. This one's going to be the one for the closest fog light to this, so of course the driver's side. And then we also have a negative wire. This negative wire I'm going to try to put on a ground of some sort. You could even of course put it right onto your negative battery terminal, wherever you feel as though it reaches to. But first let's get this down and into position. Just going to slide it down in behind this area here. Get that down nice and low. Now we're going to start dealing with the other part of the wiring here. Now we have the area with the fuse and the relay and the red wire. We're going to have that all on the driver's side over here because this red wire needs to go to the positive lead of the battery. We also have this area right here which goes to the other fog lamp. So I'm just going to go ahead and separate that, and then you'll see that these wires kind of split off. It goes to that, like I said, to the relay and the fuse over on this side, and then the rest of the wiring goes down and it leads either to that fog light or even out to that end right there. So we'll just go ahead and take both of these leads. We're going to bring them right along each other just like this. And then I'll just go ahead and add a little bit of electrical tape coming across it in a few different areas here to hold it together, and we'll continue. Okay, so I've got this all electrical tape so it's nice and neat at this point. Let's take the passenger side fog lamp connector and we're going to start running it. I'm going to come underneath this bracket right here, bring it underneath this coolant tube, and then essentially I just want to come along those coolant fans right here. So let's go ahead and bring it right down and along there. Right straight across. Okay. Now obviously we want this connector to go down to that fog lamp. So I'm just going to take that connector and start bringing it right down into where it needs to be. Now before we start wire tying anything, we want to of course make sure we have enough slack, so this is going to be where it needs to be. Generally I like to have this over on the driver's side because of course that's where your power wire is going to be, and you also have your ground wire and everything else. So just kind of have this over in a nice safe area. And also you want to make sure you have enough slack down at the far end over on the passenger side fog light to reach all the way down into the bumper to reach to that fog light. So go ahead and set that up. And then we'll just go ahead and take a nice wire tie. I'm just going to wrap it right around the wiring that's already here. Should hold it pretty safe for me. Keep it semi-loose for now, just in case I have to slide the wiring at all. I'm going to put this one right around the fan shroud. Make sure the wiring's clear and free and away from the fan, of course. You don't want it getting caught inside there as soon as the cooling fans turn on. Okay, so this looks pretty great. We still have plenty of room down on this end. Now for the next step, you're going to have to do this on both sides of the vehicle, but we're just going to do it on the driver's side so you have a clue of what's happening. There should be some either a screw or a push clip here, one right there, and then one right here. Let's go ahead and remove all those. Ours are missing, so. Now at this point I can just go ahead and slide this out of the way and we can get in behind here to our fog lamp assembly area. Okay, so we're underneath the bumper here. We've got our new wiring for the fog lamp. Let's just go ahead and get this off of here. Set that aside. Now you're going to find some mounting bolts. We want to go ahead and remove these mounting bolts right here. Let's use our 10 millimeter. We're going to start removing our 3 mounting bolts for this. There's one. Now this one right here is actually supposed to have this piece attached to our bumper cover. It's obviously broken off. I'm just going to go ahead and take it right out of there though. That piece should be part of the bumper. Now we're going to continue on to removing this one mounting bolt right here. We're going to be reusing that. And now we can take this, we'll gently peel it away. We can just go ahead and separate these. Now let's go ahead and grab onto these 2 pieces right here. Now there's going to be 2 different types You want the one that says L for the left side, and then also the other one that says L on the fog light here. It's very important you don't mix that up. If you have an L and an R, it's not going to work right. So now what we want is these two ears right here where my thumb is to fit down and into these two grooves right there. So I'm just going to take this, slide it right in there. Once you do that, you can rock it right in, latch it, and then we're going to take that one mounting bolt that we took out of the original and we'll put it right into here. Snug it up. Give it a wiggle. Now we can get ready to install this into our bumper. Let's just go ahead and take it like this. We have the adjuster down along the bottom here, and we have the 3 areas for our bolts. Up top, on the side, and on the bottom. Ours, I'm not worried about the bottom because it's broken, but you're definitely going to want to make sure you install yours. Let's go ahead and line this up with where it needs to be. Grab all of your mounting bolts, start them in. Once they're all started, you can snug them up. Obviously the bottom one too, assuming yours is there. Give it a wiggle, make sure it's secure. Let's connect in our fog lamp now. Give that a nice click. Now obviously you want to make sure that you don't have your wiring just hanging down all willy-nilly where it could get damaged. If you need to, just use a wire tie and wire it up to wherever it needs to be. Now we're going to get this re-secured. Obviously you want to put in any of the hardware that you had removed. Make sure it's nice and tight. Now let's do the same to the other side. Once you've completed installing your fog lamp assemblies, you can get right back underneath here, and then this is the adjustment for it. It's pretty much a little cog. You can just go ahead and spin it by hand. If you can't spin it by hand, you can use a Phillips head screwdriver right up through the center. Just go ahead and turn it either clockwise or counterclockwise, whichever way you need to be, so that it's as straight as possible down the road. So now what I want to do is get back up inside the engine compartment, and I'm going to make sure that I secure this relay. I don't want it bouncing around so it could potentially get damaged. Now you can essentially put this wherever you want. I'm just going to come right down here to this bolt right down there using a 10mm, remove that. Put that bolt right through here. And now we can put this down and in there. Make sure that's nice and snug. Let's give it a little wiggle here just to ensure that it's fully tightened. That feels great. Reconnect your negative battery terminal. Go ahead and snug this up. Now it's time to take care of our negative wire or ground wire for this. Looking down where I'm coming with my extension, you can see that we have a bolt that comes through the body of the vehicle right along here. I'm just going to go ahead and loosen this a little bit. I'll slide this in and then we'll tighten it up. There we are. I slid my wire in between there. Looks like it's going to press right up against the body, so now I can tighten that up. Alright, now that that's tight, let's move along to doing our positive wire. I'm just going to run it so I can bring it up and along this. I'll of course tighten it up along the way. Let's loosen up this nut right here. Put that wire over it. I'm just going to put it so it lines up along here. That's nice and tight. Alright, so let's go ahead and test these fog lights. First, before I put the key in the on position or even in the ignition, I'm going to go ahead and press on that button. Doesn't look like anything's happening. That's good news. Alright, let's go ahead and put the key in the on position, or of course you can have the vehicle running, but we don't necessarily need it running. Now at this point, my switch lights up for me here. I can go ahead and press this. Ooh, okay. So that works pretty good. Let's go ahead and turn off the key power. I'm going to put on the fog lights real quick. Turn off the key power. And the fog lights turn right off. Now with the switch still in the on position, let's go ahead and turn the key power on. Fog lights automatically turn on. Perfect. Now, if you wanted to make it so your fog lights only turn on when your low beams are on and they turn off when the high beams turn on, you'd come right into the box inside your engine compartment on the passenger side. Now, looking at the legend right here, we can have a look at our fuses, and what we would want to tap into with our little fuse tapper there is one of these two fuses, either the head RL or the head LL. Basically, those are for the low beams, and you can tap into either of those. Essentially, that's only going to get power when the headlights are on, and when you turn on the high beams, it's going to release that power. The fog lights and the low beams are going to turn off. Once you're sure everything works, let's start making everything look neat and tidy. Obviously, you don't want any wires just hanging around doing whatever they want. I'm just going to go ahead and wrap this up. Use a nice little wire tie here. Wrap that around there, and then we're going to put it into a place that we don't necessarily have to worry about it getting in the way. There's that one. Get this one too. You can of course use electrical tape or whatever you might happen to have. Let's find a place to put these. I'm just going to go up and inside along this area here. That way there, when we put in our plastic panel, it's all going to be nice and hidden for us. That's going to be very important. Another thing to think about when you're making everything neat and tidy is you want to ensure that, like I said before, it's not going to be hitting up against anything. Now we can start getting our panels in here. You want to pay attention to this area right here and this area right there. Obviously, you've got this area right here that it needs to slide onto, and then you have the area where that stud is that this needs to slide into. So let's just go ahead and start lining everything up. And get that lined up right there. Slide this sort of into position here. Lock that in. Plastic nut. Get that into position. There we are. Now let's get this piece on. Areas to pay attention to on this is you're going to have a nub that looks just like this on both sides. Then you also have these areas that go down and along it. We essentially want to make sure that the nubs line up with the corresponding holes on the plastic here. Let's go ahead and line them both up. That looks decent. Latch it in, make sure it's secure. So now we're going to want to put this cover on there, but if you use the jumper wire like what I had here, we went ahead and put a little fuse link on there, this cover isn't necessarily going to fit. But of course it does have useful information on there that you might need at a future date, so just go ahead and keep this in your glove box or your center console or whatever you're going to be able to find it when you need it. Let's put this cover on here. Let's continue on making everything neat and tidy out inside the engine compartment here. Just going to go ahead and take this wire. I'm going to run it right along this other wire right here. Now, of course, your circumstance might be a little bit different depending on the way that you decided to run your wiring. So essentially, you just want to try to make it so everything's nice and neat and tidy and it can't get caught or damage anything. I'm just going to bring it right along here. That's another. All right. Now at this point I have a whole bunch of excess here, so I'm just going to go ahead and roll this up. After that, you can of course use a wire tie, some electrical tape, whatever you need to do, and just kind of secure it someplace, like I said.